What's going on, guys? This is Alex again with another Axe Effects tutorial, and today we're going to be covering the delay module. So without any more hesitation, let's jump right in. Alright, so I know for a fact that the delay module is probably among the most popular out there. It is an effect that has generated friggin' goddamn countless of hits, and it's been used forever, and it's been used by millions of guitarists, right? It's just among my favorites. So let's give this thing some justice. So first of all, I'll mention I got a new microphone, which I am actually using the Axe Effects to process it. So that's another set of series that I'm going to be kind of going over at some point. But without further delay, let's slap a delay in here. And so right off the bat, it starts you off with a Type 2290 with modulation. And we're going to go from left to right down these pages like I normally do, explaining what each part does. As always as well, I've slapped some notes over here to the right. You can take them as you wish, and try to benefit you either way. So time and tempo, that's going to be basically telling you how far apart each delay is going to be, or how long until the delay hits. So right now it's at half a second, or not half a second, but 500 ms, which means every 500 milliseconds. So tempo and time are both tied together. So if you go to none, now you have control of it with the time. So 1000 ms is 1 second. So and that's what that's going to be giving you. So I'll just leave this at a quarter note for now. And master time, that is going to scale the time that you're using. So 100% means you're using a 1x of that. If you scale this down to say 50%, right, that's going to mean 50% of 500 ms. So it's actually effectively 250 ms. So a quarter second. And if you scale this up to say 200%, it's now at a second. So on and so forth. Feedback, that's going to tell you how long how many times this thing regenerates. So the more feedback, the longer the delays last. If you go up to 100%, you're basically giving 100% of your signal through the delay chain, and it's going to keep on regenerating indefinitely. I'll show you what that means, and I'm going to just turn it down at some point. And it will go forever. That's what this does. Turn it back down. And if you do negative, it's just negative feedback. So it flops the phase. It does the same thing though. So 0 means 0 regeneration. It only does it one time, and that's what it'll do. So let's keep it around 20. So right post delay, what this is going to do is basically, because this is a mono delay, and there's two different types of delays for the most part, other than the special ones. I'll go over them in here. Actually, I'll just mention that right now. So some of these are going to be mono, and some of them are going to be stereo. Mono obviously means you're going to be hearing it as if it's a single sound source, and stereo is going to be using two sources. So you can adjust your delays to go back and bouncing forth perhaps between both speakers, or both cans on your headphones, and so forth. Ping pong delays can go back and forth between your speakers. Vintage delays can have a kind of lower bit rate, so it sounds kind of like lo-fi-ish. Other ones are literally specifically lo-fi and tape, and things like that. So lo-fi and tape delays, and like Mind Guy. Some of these are very particular, like sweeps, and let's see, what's the other one that's really kind of big? I think dual delay. It might be. Either way, I'll go through all these and I'll mention which ones are particular and actually kind of unique among this list. So we'll just keep on going for now. So right post delay, what this will do is on a mono delay, it'll make it almost sound like it's stereo-ish. So when we add this, per se, 50 milliseconds, it's going to delay on the right-hand side, or on the right speaker, so it'll sound more full. It'll sound also somewhat syncopated. Let's increase this to 40. So then you get delay on the right speaker. Master feedback, that's another kind of, it's another scaling of sorts. So whatever the feedback is, it multiplies that. So there's a possibility of overloading these delays. And what overloading basically does is it starts to do it starts to basically go over itself, and then it'll actually build up, and then you can adjust these knobs. I would do it definitely in real time, or using one of the pedals that the Axe Effects can use in order to modify that, because if you overload it, you're going to end up with a ton of feedback, which is the purpose of this, and it can, start to get real loud, and you don't want that usually. It'll end up blowing out your speakers if you let it go for too long, or it'll just make your neighbors real hate you. And then echo pan. So you can change where the echo is kind of going, 100 being to the right speaker, negative 100 being to the left speaker. And I'm not sure if you can hear that, but it's actually providing you like a little bit of a spread from right to left, and that's what that does. So let's go to more. Diffuser is pretty cool. Kind of gives you a shimmery kind of vibe. I'll go and show you what it sounds like at 100, just so it's very obvious what this thing's doing. Hear that like kind of build up, slight gradual build up. Sounds pretty nice. Drive. This introduces some drive into your feedback loop, and so if you increase this, it'll start to sound like an overdriven delay. See what it sounds like at 10. Pretty interesting. So bit reduction is actually kind of interesting too, because traditionally basically your signal is defined by 24 bits. Basically, as you go up in bits, the more fidelity your signal contains. It's more clear, more clarity, and it has a lot more definition. So you can reduce these bits by the amount that's shown. So whatever it is, like 24 is the traditional standard amount of bits that your signal is defined by. You can reduce this by 8 per se, and it's now a 16-bit signal delay. And maybe you can't hear a difference, but you'll notice a difference once you get up to about 15, 16, because then it's starting to define your stuff by 8 bits. And you know what 8-bit sounds like, right? It's the old school like arcade games. Start to hear a little bit of noise, go up to 14, and it's going to start getting crazy quick with this. Once you get to 16, it's very noticeable. 15. 16. Let's go 19. Now it's left. All that's left is 5 bits. So that's what that does, right? So that is that. Now let's go around right onto the ducker. Actually, phase reverse. So it's basically telling you whether or not you're going to phase reverse your delay. So and that's basically when the signal starts. Like normally, perhaps if you're playing, if it was just a single tone, it would be a sine wave. It would just kind of look like this. Instead of it starting down here, it would start from up here, and that's a phase reversal. And you can do some fancy techniques to cancel out other parts of your signal by having an exact opposite being played at the same exact time, and that would cause cancellation of the via phase. So you can do that, but to be honest, without actually going and finding out what parameters I need to mess with and how I have to play in order to do this, you're not going to hear too much difference. So if you want, I'll try just showing you. If I'll play the same thing twice, if you can hear a difference, great, let me know. If you heard a difference, let me know in the comments. That'd be great. All right, so attenuation and the ducker. So what a ducker does, and I love this thing. So your delay signal comes in, right? And sometimes it can overwash what you're playing, basically. Like listen right here. So my delays are overgoing on top of my signal, and sometimes it's very overpowering, right? So when you have the attenuation on the ducker set to 0, the ducker's off. But if you set the attenuation to say 20 dB, and the threshold is basically how high the signal has to be in order for your ducker to start attenuating the delays. So what this will do is when you're playing, you're actively strumming or something like that, or playing, it's going to attenuate the delays so that your playing comes through, and then your delays only happen during the downtime, which is great because sometimes you don't want to hear your delays when you're playing. I'll give you an example of that right now. Now if I drop the threshold down to say 50, right, and increase the attenuation up to 30 perhaps, which is insane amounts of attenuation, right? And now just notice at the very end, the delay is kind of dragged out. That's exactly what a ducker is intending. When I was playing and strumming, the delay over my signal was kind of squelched, and so that you could hear what I was playing, and then the signal just kind of shows up, or the delay it shows up in the background. And the release time, I wrote it down right up here in case you guys are wondering where all this stuff is how long it takes for the delays to return. And I kind of always get that mixed up with how long it takes to return and how long it takes to come on. So that's what it is. So basically, when you're done playing, or you've finished, how long will it take for these delays to start coming back after you've played you've put your input in. So that's what that does. So the Compander is kind of a mix between two words. It's a pretty deep signal processing terminology, but it's a compression and an expander. And usually, honestly, this is what I use this for, is to basically do some compression, and it also limits the amount of attack that you get out of your signal. So when I turn this on, the time is how many samples, basically how much time in between when you first play and how long it's going to take how much of this signal is going to take in, like per se. If I play that, it's going to take only 10 milliseconds worth of data, and it's going to kind of squish that, or it's going to compress it, so either increase or decrease the signal, and then it's going to expand upon it so it's more even. So the threshold is how loud the signal has to be. So perhaps I say negative 80 dB, or I could say negative 40 dB, and I want this the time between, or how long I want it to take in, is say 50 milliseconds. So now my attacks are going to be less noticeable, so it'll be a little bit more smooth. And that's what that does. And you can see the ducker's still on, so that's what that's doing. All right. And that's the entire more page for most of these. I'll go bring it back some more when I come to some more of these other delay types. Modulation. So basically, you've got access to 2 LFOs, which is, short for low frequency oscillators. And what these do is they multiply. You're multiplying your signal by these shapes right here, and the rate is how often these signals repeat themselves. So the tempo and the rate is the same as, you know, in any of these kind of delay-y type of effects. So 500 hertz means basically it's 500 hertz or 0.5 hertz. If you go up to 1 hertz, it's 1/60. So we'll tinker with this real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we'll stay at 1 hertz. We'll increase the depth to 50, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. And then if we increase the rate, and it's kind of actually I'll get rid of this one, put this down to 1. This is the shape of the LFO. So A stable kind of looks like a slanted sawtooth. So all of these different shapes are going to be the size of the first LFO. Now, if you want, you can tinker with these a little bit and make it sound kind of interesting. Let's go to like 2.5, and then I'll bring this one to 5, and I'll change this log to a saw down. Oh, actually this depth was at 0, so let's go and bring this up. If we increase this depth all the way up to 100, basically what this depth does is how far down it travels, kind of like the amplitude of it. Sounds pretty crazy, right? It's how pronounced these shapes are going to be within your signal, and you're going to hear it for sure. That's when you can really hear the difference. So if you really want to hear the difference in what your signal is, change that depth all the way to 100%, and you'll be able to really kind of identify what this shape is really doing. All right, so another kind of aspect about this thing is that you can flop the phase on each of these LFOs individually, per se. So if I was, say, in a sine here and a sine here, this is where I could kind of show you what's going on. Target left, target right, and then maybe I want my hertz to be the same. And then maybe I want the depth to be 40 here and 40 here. Actually, you know what? Just make them both 100. And then I make the phase. And I flop the phase by 90 degrees. So what this is doing is it's shifting, like on this one, it's shifting it from here down to here. Now if I go all the way up to 180, now they're basically, like one is going the opposite. So one is, it's going to sound like on the left-hand side, it's going to be at low, and then the right-hand side is going to be at the high at the same time. It's an interesting way to kind of tinker around with how your entire kind of delay chain is vibing. It just makes the whole like vibrations feel pretty cool. So you can tinker around with those. And so the targets here is whether or not it's targeting both of the stereo or just the left or the right individually. Then the EQ, I'm not going to go too hard into EQ on this one just because I have it, like there's another entire block on EQ, graphic EQs, parametric EQs. There's a ton of EQs, and it's not particularly special to the delay block, though the EQ in this is specific to the delay block, so it's what's going on within this actual module. I'll go over it very, very, very briefly, but nothing crazy in depth. So what you've got in here is you're altering a low band and a high band and the slopes, so you can change your frequencies, where it's cutting, where this is going to be at, like what's your band at, what's the slope of it. Oh, actually this one's kind of a little bit different. So you can change where it's going to be hitting. This is the gain, considering it was at 0, it was just flat. So if you want your frequency to change right here, Q, how steep, it's going to be how shape it is. Same thing over here, you want the gain, or maybe you want this. Move that over, shift that up. It's just another way to filter out what's going on. Filter out certain frequencies, change things up a bit. And that's what that's doing. So that's all there is about the EQ and all these four as it's standard. Let's go and start tinkering around with the different types. So now we're on to ambient stereo, which means that now we've got left and right feedback individually, and we've got a spread. And so what this is doing is now you've got a stereo, basically a stereo delay. And the master time, everything else here is the same, except now you've got the feedbacks on individual sides. So now you can go feedback, say 50% on left, 50% on right, which means that the delays are going to be regenerating for 50% of the time, which is, I don't know how many times it's repeating your signal. It depends on how often or what the distance is in between each one is. But either way, it's set it at 50% right now. And right now the spread is 100%. So if we change that down to 50, it's going to come in closer and closer and closer to mono. So at 0, there should be 0 spread. It's going to sound exactly like the mono. Actually, one thing I didn't actually point out is this repeat, stack, and hold. What this can do is it can act almost like a looper. And I'll demonstrate that real quick. Off is off, pretty self-explanatory. But if you stack it, it's going to be replaying that every 500 milliseconds, which is a half second. Hold it. It's going to hold what that is. But if you want to stack some more things on top of it, and that's what that does. Basically, you can keep on stacking stuff on top of it, hold it at certain points, or whatever you want to do. But I would recommend, if you want to use that stack and hold, change this up a little bit longer so your loop time's a little bit longer, and then change the stack. So you could be like, that's what that's doing. That's how you use it. So if you want to use it, go ahead, be my guest. That's what it's there for. So in here, everything is the same. Nothing changes in here. Everything here, the same. Everything in here, the same. However, notice that when you change it from one to the other, these all kind of tinker around, kind of move on their own, right? Because that's what most of these things are doing, is they're just changing the parameters on these delay options that you have already for you. So notice the analog mono. Not really any difference, right? Analog stereo. Not really any difference. Not really any difference. They might change. They change these individual settings a little bit, but what these things are good for is you can go and find one that you like, you know, just standard kind of options that they give you, and then you can adjust it, you know, as you want to get your own custom delay, and then you save that sucker right to a library, and you can have your own custom one in here, and then you can just swap right to it. So I'm going to kind of go through these, show you which ones are kind of different, specifically that have options that none of the other ones do. So we go through here, type, analog stereo, deluxe mind guy, digital mono, digital stereo, DM two-way. This one's kind of cool, and all this really does is it changes up some of it in here, right? Because it automatically defaults with the Compander on. And I will say, DM two-way is not in the manual, like inside the actual Axe-Fx manual. It's so new, it's not in there, so you won't find it. So the best way to do this is to try this one out, is to tinker with it yourself, see what you can do with it. But to be fair, all it is just changing some of these things around. So dual delay, that's up here, and this has actually got some new features in here. So let's go over what's going on in here. So basically, here I'll show you a little diagram of what's actually happening with this thing. Take my snip, pull this little sucker right here. So this is what's actually going on in here. So these feedback R to R, feedback R to L, L to L, L to R, what's going on is it's going through the delay block, and then this one's going L to L, and then this one is going L to R. Imagine that. It's exactly what it sounds like. And that's what's going on in there. And then you can change your master pan, your level right, your pan left, and pan left, or your level left. And that's what those are doing individually. Everything else, the same. But you've got dual delays, so you can change the time on one and the other, and they sound pretty cool. Oh, looks like there's a long ass delay, right? So let's just do 500 milliseconds and maybe 750. And then this one's not giving you any of that, so you could do 40 on this, 40 on that. Just gives you a very robust delay that you can tinker around a lot with. This is one of the kind of unique ones where you have two entire sets and you can change out some things. Ducking delay, well, it has the ducker already kind of set inside here, but it's by standard, it's just a stereo delay with some ducking. So everything else, the same. Graphite copy. This looks like to be a mono delay. Has the Compander on. A little bit of drive. Lo-fi tape. I like this one quite a bit. And this one is because it's quite unique. And that basically these are controlling what would look like the motors on an actual tape, like a tape reader, and you know, controlling that tape delay as you like kind of slide it in quicker. If you ever seen, I look up a video on the old school manual tape delays. They're pretty interesting. So that's what these are doing. You can control the level of each individual head. So let's increase that to, let's slap this one to left, slap this one to right, feedback on here up to 50% roughly. And so this head to ratio, what this is doing is it's taking your motor speed and your time, and it's applying head 2 as a ratio of head 1, which is right here. So head 2, which is this one, which I have panned all the way to the right, is going to be 75% of the time of head 1, which is the left. Aside from that, everything is the same, but which is great because you can change the modulation on your LFO, which could be attached to both one of the left or the right. So target left, target right. Now your head is controlling these individual LFOs. So you should think about that when you're kind of making your own individual effect. So on to the next. Mono BBD. I'm not sure what BBD means, but you know, not totally sure. But it's a pretty standard mono delay with some of these other features enabled. Mono tape, it's another tape delay. Head 1, head 2, but it doesn't have the it's a mono, not a stereo. So tinker with that as you will. Ping pong delay, bounces back and forth from left to right, and your spread's at 100. So where is it? It's pretty cool. I like that one. Reverse delay. This one's an interesting one because obviously it's one of the unique ones with different features on here. So the difference is obviously right here: crossfade, run, and trigger. So trigger restart, what that's going to do is it's going to sync up your delays, or when it starts to do your delay in reverse of what you played before. Here I was kind of playing my signal that I just put in, but in reverse. Ooh, man. And the crossfade time is how much of your signal is being played. How much delay before it actually starts to kick in. The time here changes how long of a reverse it's going to be putting in. And then if I have more crossfade time, that's kind of what that's doing. And now I can do the trigger restart, and it'll sync up when those delays happen. And you can use this in order to sync it up with your pedal. So that's useful to be able to do. And the run just turns this thing on and off. So that's what the reverse delay does. All the other things are the same, except for in here you don't have as much control. You don't have like the Compander and stuff like that. And then let's see, go down to stereo BBD. Same thing as a mono BBD, but stereo. Stereo Mind Guy is another stereo delay. Has some of the other features on here already set. And then the stereo tape. It's a tape delay, but in stereo. Sweep delay. This one's actually kind of interesting because you've got a sweep tab. I'll go over that in 2 seconds. But aside from that, it's a stereo delay. And all right, let's go into the sweep tab. So what this thing is going to do, it's going to sweep frequencies at a certain rate, and then it has, like, you know, in modulation has this, has the same types, but in the sweep. So if you want sine wave, you know, if you want this thing to sweep at, let's just leave it at 250 or 0.1, I guess. Whatever, I'll put it up here. And then the sweep tempo is going to be attached to the sweep rate. You could do the sweep phase. You could change it to, like, you know, 45 degrees or something. And you can change where it sweeps from and starts at. Let's see, actually. I don't like that. And you change this up to, like, maybe 300, go up to 1,000. And the sweep rate, go that to 1 hertz. And it kind of like has a sweeping feel to it. Now let's go to 500, come back down to 1500, increase the sweep rate to 2. Hear that shimmery kind of feel when it's at 10 hertz? See how wide that feels? Once again, you've got modulation options as well. So This one gets crazy, so you can really kind of tinker with this one for quite a bit. And Vintage Digital, which is another mono delay, except has some good ass kind of has. I will mention these are not all the same, right? They're not like you're just changing these settings. These are actually internally different inside the software, so they have different sounds by default. So like this one is not going to sound the same with the same settings as the other one. They will have different characteristics. And it sounds pretty good. I like this one because it has like kind of a lo-fi feel to it. But that is everything. That is the entire delay chain. I know this one was a real long one. However, there's a lot to go about with delay. So until the next time, I'll catch you on a flippy floppy. Ciao.